The SEC is the best conference in college football. There's no reason to argue it. Let's be honest here. I get it. There's a small crowd of Big Ten fans that want to disagree with that. And you know what? They can do so. Go ahead, leave a comment. I'm more than happy to, have a good, honest discussion about who's the best conference, especially in 2024 with all the additions and mergers and acquisitions these conferences have made. But today we are talking about the SEC and what they will look like in 2024. Throughout the next 10 to 15 minutes, we will be diving into each tier and where I think these teams will land. Some are going to be ahead of others that you may disagree with, and feel free to let me know. I am more than happy to either explain my take or, have an honest discussion about that as well. These will be ranked from left to right, so the more left team in a tier is going to be ranked there for a reason, and I think is going to be one above the other, and I'll explain why. But let's first dive into what these tiers will look like. In the first tier in red is the conference favorites. It's going to be a very limited list. These are just the teams I think that could actually win the conference. Then we have the orange tier for the teams that I think at best can either make the conference title game or backdoor their way into a 12-team playoff format. Then you have the average teams. These are going to be the 7-5, 6-6 of the world. Then you have 2024 Florida, which I'll explain in a little bit more detail. Then you have the bottom of the barrel of the conference, and then there's Vanderbilt. Pretty simple. And I am very much aware that spring ball has just started. You still have the spring transfer window, which I believe should be coming out in the next 10 days, and they'll reopen and you'll have new players moving over. But I'm not going to do this whole thing where I read every single rumor. I go to fall camp and listen to every single rumor then, and then change my opinion. And all of a sudden, maybe Ole Miss is a conference favorite now. No, I want to get this take off now and then make some slight tweaks right before the season. But I really sincerely doubt that it's going to be more the left or right on like what team in their tier is going to be better versus moving a team up. If I'm moving a team up, it's damn sure going to get a video about it because that's a big jump and someone made a massive move or that rumor is just too good to be true. We'll start it off with LSU, though. I think LSU is in a really interesting position in 2024. Let's get the obvious out of the way. You lose your quarterback, you lose your two wide receivers, you lose some pieces on the defense. Now, let's be fair, that defense was really bad, and some of those losses were necessary, and we're talking about the coaching staff. They've made some incredible additions on that coaching staff. You can go look it up. It's impressive to say the least. Now, can that fix that defense in 1 year? That is the question, because let's be honest, if they had any type of a defense last season, I think they win the national title. And I don't think that's much of a hot take. I mean, they damn sure make the playoff, and I think they give Michigan a run for their money if they're just an average defense. The same thing that we've said about USC for years. And honestly, LSU had a better offense than USC in the past 2 years. Let's be real here, even when they had Jordan Addison. But let's talk about 2024. Garrett Nussmeier is the quarterback, but the guy to look for, in my opinion, is Kyron Lacey. This team just continually produces wide receivers. They have a case to be wide receiver university right there with Ohio State. But that defense, man, I get it. You have Harold Perkins. They've recruited really well. How quickly can they flip that defense into an actual elite level defense, to be honest? I mean, you're in the SEC. That's the standard. Can they achieve that? And with that being said, I think LSU is going to be a sleeper to go to the SEC title. Now, am I as high on them as other people are? I believe they're like top 10 in national title rankings. I think the problem I have with LSU is the same one that I had last year. When you have a laundry list of questions, like I had a laundry list of questions with their defense last year. That's why I said when they were a top 5 preseason team, they were being overrated because I didn't think that secondary was going to get fixed in a year. And can they get fixed again through the transfer portal? Now you have better coaching on paper. I think LSU, are they a lock to make the SEC title? I think they're far from it. They have too many questions on now even the offensive side of the ball. So I'm very curious about how this team will be, but they're still a really, really solid team in the SEC. Florida gets their own tier for a multitude of reasons. I can't really project how they'll be compared to their peers in the conference because of how difficult that schedule is. It's the same thing that everyone else has talked about when we're talking about Florida this year is that schedule is brutal. No way around it. So what should the expectation be for Billy Napier? And I have some genuine fear that they're going to turn into the same program that is happening in their very own state with Miami. Are they going to continuously churn out head coach after head coach and not really let them build anything? Because let's be real, I think a lot of people and their fans and maybe even the institution itself doesn't realize what Dan Mullen left this program after he left, which was nothing. And let's be real, Billy Napier's trying his best here. Now, is he the guy? I really don't know. Bringing in DJ Lagway was massive. But he's not going to be the guy this year. It's going to be Graham Mertz. The best kept secret in all of college football was he was pretty damn good. And he was written off at Wisconsin, and he had a pretty solid year. Now they lose some pieces to the NFL. Trevor Etienne is out the door. So can he even replace the little production that was already on this team? I'm not sure. And it really worries me. I think they're going to be a below average team, and they're going to really struggle to win maybe 5 to 6 games. And is that enough to keep Billy Napier for just one more year? Worries me that they won't. Vanderbilt gets their own tier. I'm not really going to fight anyone over it. I don't have any takes about Vanderbilt. They're just bottom of the barrel, waiting till baseball season. Let's talk about Texas A&M. I will be biased in this. I'll admit it. I'll be straight up with you. I really think A&M is going to be a solid team. I think they're going to be a surprise team in the SEC. There's always one of those. And I can identify some contenders for that title of the surprise team. Last year it was Missouri. I think in previous years it was Ole Miss, sometimes Mississippi State. Even a South Carolina year, I believe 2 years ago, could classify that. A&M with Mike Elko is a big upgrade, I think, from Jimbo Fisher, who was kind of like the stale bread of coaching. And I think people are underestimating how impressive it is to get Colin Klein to be their offensive coordinator. The former quarterback from Kansas State, former Heisman finalist right there with Johnny Manziel, gets pulled away from his alma mater, and he's a young offensive mind, which was so desperately needed for this team. And I get it. They lost Evan Stewart. They lost Walter Nolan, which we'll talk about Walter in a minute. They still retained a lot of that talent, and I think when you bring back your quarterback, you bring back a couple of those wide receivers, you bring back that running back room, you bring back a lot of that offensive line, and the defense still keeps some real key pieces from that class and from the transfer class. I think that this team could surprise some people. I get it. Their schedule is really not as difficult as it could be. You don't have to face Alabama. You don't have to face Georgia. Are they a sleeper team to make the SEC title? No. But could they backdoor their way into an at-large bid and surprise some people? Maybe they go 9-3, 10-2 with some really impressive wins to finish the year. There's a path for it. Now, will I predict it? No, but I think they're going to be above just being average, and I think they would be in the back of this tier. Once it's filled out, there's going to be a lot more teams in front of them, but I think A&M is really going to surprise some people, not to the dark horse national title contenders type of level, but I think for the first year of Mike Elko, it's going to be better than like an 8-4 or 7-5 type of year. And for Missouri, with the easiest schedule in the SEC, I think that they could be right behind LSU. I'm not a huge Brady Cook guy. I am a Luther Burden guy. And I think what they're building at Missouri is really interesting. Are they recruiting at a high level? Is their NIL being unlocked by the day? Yes, yes, yes. But the one caveat is I'm very worried that they won't meet the expectations that will be set for them following the past season. Now, what is the expectation for Missouri? In some crowds, it's make the SEC title. With how weak their schedule is, I think their most difficult game will be either an away game at Alabama or at home potentially. And if they're able to do that, man, they're looking at an 11-1 year and being in that conference title game. Now, do I think that will happen? I really don't know. Now, they will need some guys from that top end to step up and also to be able to fill in the gaps on that defense. The defense is going to need a step up, and they did lose some defensive pieces in that coaching room. So can I guarantee that they're going to make the SEC title and meet those expectations? I don't think so. And I think they're going to be in that sleeper realm with a lot to prove and a lot of upside. Auburn's going to be a pretty average team in the year 2 of Hugh Freeze, but this is not a team you want to face if you are a ranked opponent. Listen, I said it last year. They are a team that just in general with this program, if you're ranked and you're facing them, especially away, you just don't want to do it. Talk to Georgia and talk to Alabama. Now, Auburn, obviously the quarterback room is really rough, but he's still recruiting at a high level. Transfers are coming in. I think Hugh Freeze in the year 3 is when things get really dangerous once they get rid of Peyton Thorne. I'm not a believer in Peyton Thorne, never will be. And I think that's what's going to hold this team back from actually being a really, really solid team primed for maybe even a playoff run. But right now, with no real replacement inside at quarterback, I can only put them at average. Tennessee. Ooh, I love Tennessee. Listen, are their fans annoying? Are they delusional? Yes, yes, yes. But when we're talking about Tennessee and Nico time is coming in, I think they're going to be a really fun team. I think they're going to be right behind Missouri this year. And I think that they are going to be one of the more fun teams in the SEC. It's really a shout out to Josh Heupel. The fact that they were able to, go from that air raid attack with Hendon Hooker. Joe Milton obviously did not meet expectations. And they ended up being a really run-first offense with a really solid defense, which just shows the sign that they were able to adapt play styles, something not a lot of coaches are able to do. And I got to credit Josh Heupel for that. Now, did they meet the expectations of the year prior with this past season? No. But could they this year with a new quarterback with a lot of talent? Nico could be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft with the amount of talent he has. It's a lot to ask out of a young quarterback, but there were some signs that he could really put it together this year. And I don't think their schedule is that difficult. I think this team is going to be almost undervalued to a lot of the fans because, the last thing they saw was Joe Milton in a running attack. If they are able to find some really good wide receivers and continue the momentum on defense, this is a team you do not want to face. Arkansas is going to be really bad, and they're going to fire their head coach. South Carolina is an interesting team to me. I think that they're just going to be a pretty average football team. I'm not expecting a lot out of South Carolina this year. Beamer ball hype has died down 110%. So really, what is their expectations this year? They're replacing Spencer Rattler. There's still some real holes on that offensive line. And they're replacing just honestly a lot on that offense now that I really think about it. I don't think Mississippi State's going to be that good in the first year of their new head coach. There's a whole lot of new with this team, but could they surprise some people? Potentially, but I'm going to put them potentially like a 6-6 team, maybe even 5-7. It's just like, let's be real here. There's a lot of good teams in the SEC and they're just kind of falling behind. So I can't just say that Mississippi State is going to be like an average team when you add just so many better teams. And I think the teams in the SEC that are just continually growing are either having multi-year head coaches. I get it. They could hit the ground running. I just don't really see it for Mississippi State this year. Alabama football. I was ready to make a hot take on Alabama in general to say that this is a team that's going to lose 3+ games and the wheels are going to fall off and then they're going to have an incredible following year. And then I started really thinking about it. And when we look at how weak this quarterback class is going into the following season and how people are talking about it, does this not just feel like a year to have someone come out of nowhere primed to shock the world? And when you look at candidates to do so, and a lot of times where I like to start is guys who have a ton of upside. You have to have some layer of potential. Yeah, you have some outliers because, like, let's be real, no one expected Joe Burrow to gain the arm talent like through his mechanics in 2019. Like, that was out of nowhere. But like Lamar Jackson, we knew he had a ton of talent the year prior, and then he went off. The guys that they have added at Alabama, and to be able to bring Caden Proctor back, and they're really believing and leaning into this new culture without Nick Saban. Can you not say that someone like Jalen Milroe doesn't have one of the highest, if not the highest ceiling in college football for a quarterback? You could say Quinn Ewers if you want, but damn sure I get it. The floor is a lot lower with Jalen Milroe. Like, I'm talking myself into this team being really, really good. Now, would I say they're a conference favorite? No. But I think they could be better than LSU. And I think they're a team not to be overlooked. I think they're a team that potentially has a Heisman quarterback. Now, I'm not giving you my Heisman pick yet, but like, let's not overlook Jalen Milroe here. Is it crazy to say that I am talking myself into a Jalen Milroe Heisman campaign? I don't think it's crazy. Let's talk about Georgia. Georgia is a conference favorite. Let's not overlook it. They're the best team in the SEC. I get it. I'm not like Carson Beck isn't this like game changer, but an elite level game manager for the amount of talent on this roster. I get it. They're losing Brock Bowers. Oscar Delp isn't like Brock Bowers level, but it's not like they're replacing him with bums. And the fact that Georgia continuously finds like walk-on players that really provide high-level amounts of production. And then on top of that, their defense, I think, took a step back. And like, I'm never going to doubt Kirby Smart. He's got that weird look in his eye of crazy that Nick Saban always had. He's going to figure it out. They're going to be in contention. Ole Miss, I think, is the best team to potentially make the conference title game. There's a lot of question marks with that defense, not due to talent. I don't believe in their defense coordinator as of right now. So you can come for my head later, but like, Ole Miss is a really, really good team. Jackson Dart's a Heisman contender. The wide receiver room is great. I get it. Quinshaw Judkins left. It's not moving me to a point where I wouldn't say that they're not a fan favorite to be a dark horse SEC title contender. I just don't think they beat the teams that are at the very top of the list. I think that they would really make it an interesting game. Their schedule is relatively light. Ole Miss has primed themselves to potentially be a playoff game wrecker. I think they are the closest thing in this tier to a playoff lock. And I think they would really give the two teams that are in the conference favorites a run for their money. Kentucky is going to be average. They're going to be a 7-5 team. I think they're going to be really fun. They continually add to the transfer portal. They added Brock Vandergriff. I think they always hit a ceiling. Like, they have Jimbo Fisher without a national title at head coach. I'm not really moved by it. Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma is going to be a really, really interesting team. And I think that they're going to be at the back of a sleeper to the playoff. It's their schedule that's going to hold them back. Oklahoma's schedule is brutal. And I think that they have some real questions with the offensive line. And when you have those major questions at a certain position group, like the secondary, like the offensive line, like the wide receiver room, those are the three that I really look at. Rarely do you see like questions about the running back room and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what's going to be the Achilles heel to a team. But offensive line, secondary, and I would say even defensive line, and then wide receiver room in that order are like ranked of importance. And when Oklahoma is replacing a lot on that offensive line, they have a new quarterback, new offense coordinator, Brent Venables. If he's able to produce at least a team that could be, I guess, end of October, really starting to look like, oh, wow, this could be a potential at-large team if they win these key games, it would be, I think, proof that this dude is the guy at head coach. I just wouldn't predict it, but I think they have the upside of potentially being a really, really good team in the SEC. Texas, as much as I hate it, are in the conference favorites. They bring back potentially the best quarterback in the conference. Their wide receiver room just gets reloaded. Their running back room, please do not sleep on Cedric Baxter. The offensive line is reloaded. The defense is the question mark. That is, can you make the next step, or are you still going to be average and just be a one game out in the playoff? I think they're a playoff lock. I think it'd be a disappointment if these two are not the matchup for the SEC title. And if you don't know, Georgia versus Texas would be a rematch of a regular season game. So regardless, we are going to see Georgia go into Austin to face Texas and be a litmus test of, is Texas ready for this? And I think it's going to be really interesting, honestly. I like, there's not a lot of analyst things to say about Texas other than, all right, you proved yourself last year, do it again. That's just the nature of the sport. Do it again. So this is the full tier list. Let's kind of overview it real quick. I think, honestly, that second tier is the biggest point of contention. I think you can move Mizzou a little bit up if you really feel so. I'm just not going to sleep on Alabama. If you really want to put A&M and Oklahoma, these are the only two that I could see the argument for average, while Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss, I think, are locked to be at least in that second tier. If I were to like potentially put another tier, I think it would be like A&M and Oklahoma in their own little world as like high upside teams that potentially could make a run into that second tier, but not in a conference favorite. And I think the only teams that could be a conference favorite or potentially win it would be Ole Miss. And then maybe Alabama, but that would mean that like Jalen Milroe unlocked everything. I feel for 2024 Florida. And then the bad teams like Mississippi State maybe could be an average team, but I feel like these three are going to be the average teams in the SEC. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. This is going to be Rush the Field / Tegan Randolph show. So let's keep it chill. Let's keep it simple and have a fantastic rest of your day.